Um, I wanted to ask in terms of that as well, from that sort of experience for people, can people use that to build resilience, from dealing with these sort of setbacks in their lives? Do you think that can be a way of building that up?
Yeah, resilience is a great question, and we get asked a lot about it in our sessions and in our one-to-one work and all the stuff we do here. And I'm a massive believer in resilience. Is only built through adversity, or being pushed out your comfort zone, or being uncomfortable, getting comfortable in being uncomfortable, if you like. And you can't build resilience if you don't face situations head on, or if you don't try to surface things that trouble you and try and reframe them in your mind, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
Resilience is, there's two tips I'd give on resilience. If you fear something, or if you don't feel very resilient in a certain situation, the only way to become resilient, the first thing is repetition. So putting yourself in the fear. The power of repetition is really important. And I'll give you an example. When I first started doing public speaking, as good as people might have said it was, and as comfortable as I may have looked to people, I wasn't on the inside. I was terrified. And I remember coming away from my first few conference gigs and almost collapsing in the car thinking, never again. It was so nerve-wracking. And that went on with me for about 3 years. I was terrified. I used to get sweaty palms. My heart rate would rise. I used to pace up and down. And I used to be incredibly nervous about doing it. And then I'd do the talk or the gig, and then I'd come off after a positive reaction or a round of applause, and I'd feel great. And it was enough to keep me going back. But let me tell you, for 3 years, I was terrified. And only through the power of repetition, of doing it time and time again, did it get a little bit easier every time. And I can honestly say now, 14 years on, I still get nerves, right? I still get nerves, and it's still that level of fight or flight that releases in me. But I can manage it, and I can turn and harness it and channel it into adrenaline. And now I genuinely enjoy it and get fulfillment from it. But the point being is, to build the resilience up against the fear of public speaking, I had to do it probably 500 times before I remotely became used to it. Now, what do typically the people do in their life? If you're scared of heights, or if you've got a fear of public speaking, or if you've got a fear of whatever it might be, right? Unless you put yourself in that and time again, you're never going to get rid of that fear. In fact, when you avoid it, if you're the type of person who is scared of flying, so you don't get on a plane, you cancel your holiday every year, then that fear grows, because your brain goes, well, we got away with that one. Remember, we don't like flying, right? So the fear grows if you avoid it, whereas the fear shrinks when you put yourself in it time and time again through the power of repetition. So the first thing I'd say on resilience is, you've got to do something that feels incredibly uncomfortable to you an awful lot of times before you build the resilience level to deal with it. The second thing is reframing something that's happened in the past that has created this anchor in your brain that something's bad or has bad experience. Yeah. So if you've ever fallen out with a family member, for example, Dave, or you've maybe had a really bad experience with a manager in your workplace, you could put an anchor, psychological anchor in your brain that me and my family member hate each other, or management is bad, right? They're all bad managers. So what you tend to do is, because you have that resentment build up, then every time you go into that interaction, it ends up being a negative experience for you. Whereas when you reframe and replay what's happened in the past and take the positives out of it, or look at it from a different context, then you start becoming more resilient against its effects. So, for years, maybe an example of this might be, if my parents split when I was 11, and I was probably incredibly resentful of that for a number of years, which made me angry and probably counterproductive. But only when I became more mature and I reflected on that, actually, it made me incredibly strong, independent, self-reliant. We got by. And would I be the same person now without that past experience? Would I be as driven to succeed without that? Probably no, I wouldn't. So by reframing it into a different way that I view it, it's made me more resilient against its effects. Does that make sense? So
yeah, definitely.
2 tips there. Power of repetition on anything you fear will make you more resilient, and past experiences that are harming you or causing you frustration or anger, you've got to dig them out, not ignore them. You've got to address them, and you've got to reframe them.